Hello, everyone. Cory from the Bath-Brunswick Regional Chamber here. I'm doing another one of our candidate interviews. As I say at the top of all of our candidate interviews, the Chamber does this so you get to know the candidates that you're going to be voting on or the ones that represent the districts that your business is in. So, with that, this is not an endorsement of any candidate. Our Chamber does not do that for State House positions, although we generally do like everyone we talk to. And our next one is Rafael. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Cory?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So, hey, we're going to go through just five questions just to get people to know you. And we'll start with the same questions. And, we might go off on a tangent or go down a road based on some of the answers, but we like to give everyone the same five questions to start with. And so, that first question is, what district are you running for and where does that cover?
Hey, so I'm running for House District 51, which is the majority of Topsham.
Yeah. Majority of Topsham, I know, I think it was last cycle, a portion of Topsham got put into a district with Lisbon and Durham and a few other locations. So great. Question two, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for office.
All right. Well, I moved to Maine in 2007 with the Navy. There was a ship, USS Stockdale, being built at Bath Iron Works, and I was the supply officer there. And, we hadn't even been here one winter, and we knew, my wife and I, Gemma, we knew we wanted to stay here. And so we started looking for a house, and we found a place here in Topsham. And so I sailed away in 2009 and then came back in 2013 when I retired and opened up a business, did that for a while, and started learning to meditate after I stopped doing business. I told my wife after about 5 years of being a photographer, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, nothing. After doing 22 years in the Navy, I was kind of like wanted to take a break. So I did. And, during that time, I was just go down by the river and meditate and read and relax. And during that time, a lot of things changed for me. I changed my politics. I changed my religion. And it was all for the best too. I was just sitting here on the deck one day, and I realized how fortunate I was to be able to do exactly what I was doing. As a retiree, I have TRICARE, so I have good health care. I have this home that the Navy helped me buy. I had an education that the Navy paid for. And so here I was just enjoying myself. And I realized how fortunate I was. And that there are a lot of people out there not as fortunate as me. And seeing, driving through Portland, Brunswick, Lewiston, you see homeless folks. And it really affected me that people were waking up in the snow while I was, comfortable in my own home. And so I talked to my wife about it. I was really growing frustrated with the way politics was going in between 16 and 20. And my wife's like, well, what are you going to do about it? And so I started volunteering at the Statehouse. I started talking to my representatives and senators and feeling heard, really. The way it works at the Statehouse, you can go up there with a piece of paper, write your name on there, say something to your representative, give it to the doorman, and they take it right to them. And if you want them to come outside, they'll come outside. And so I thought that was great. And so I would come home and my wife's like, whatever you're doing, keep doing that, because it was making a change in me. Even though they may have heard me, they may have listened to me, but I felt heard, at least. And so I started doing that. That was back in 2019. The real reason I started going into politics was I met a 16-year-old Mexican kid who hadn't seen his father in 8 years. He finally saw him in Vermont, found him at a dairy farm in Vermont, and saw him for the night. His father got up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He got put onto a bus hour and a half away at another dairy farm for 6 weeks. Nobody knew Spanish. They had Portuguese and English speakers there. And 6 weeks later, his paycheck amounted to about $3.50 an hour. And but the Fair Labor Standards Act agriculture exemption, it allows that. And frankly, that pissed me off, and that it was legal to do that to anybody, American citizen or not. They were being cheated, but it was legal. And so I started going to the Statehouse for that reason. Also, PFAS in our water. Brunswick Naval Air Station is just right across the river here on the Androscoggin, and you know, finding out that how polluted the river used to be at one point concerned me. So I started going to the Statehouse asking about PFAS in the water. And again, I felt heard, and I made friends up there. And since then, I've been encouraged to run by my representatives, you know, both of them, and decided to run.
That, you know, the part of that story that I love so much is I mean, it's a powerful story. I love a lot of pieces of it, but the one I want to highlight is that approachability of the legislators, you know, and it's not just when it's me going up there as the Chamber of Commerce guy. I mean, I see it all the time. Our delegation in particular really pays attention to the constituents, and they're not just some empty suits. These are people that are here and listening, and you can't believe how easy it is to reach out and talk to these legislators. And a lot of people don't know that. That's intimidating for someone that's never done that before. And honestly, it's a point that I know, but I've never actually brought it up to anyone. And it's such a valid point. So thank you for that, and for the rest of your story. I mean, that's incredible. Question 3: what are the 3 top issues affecting Mainers right now that you look forward to working on if elected?
All right. Well, I already mentioned several of them, including the healthcare. You know, the fact that I have healthcare and it's affordable, it brings me peace of mind, and that's really what I want for everybody. There's people either don't have any health care or have poor health care coverage, and they're afraid to go to the doctor because of how much it'll still cost them, or if it'll be denied, or if they do go to the doctor and they find that they do have something, you know, an illness, how much is it going to cost? So then they start fearing going bankrupt because they get sick. So that's just a piss poor way to run a healthcare system in our country. And you know, so what I want for everybody is universal health care. How we pay for that, how it gets done, you know, is all up for discussion. And there's a lot of good ideas out there. I'm willing to, you know, work with other people and their ideas in order to make that happen. And you know, who cares who gets credit for it? Let's just make it happen. You know.
No, I was uninsured for about 10 years, and it's tough, man. It's tough. I mean, my dental health got behind. I mean, this was back when I was single and that sort of thing, and so I just said, I'm all right. But it's a tough way to live. It's a real tough way to live. So
and it is, because you know, the affordability part of it. I have a son-in-law who works, you know, part-time during the year, but during that time that he's working, he's paying $1,100 a month for healthcare insurance, for insurance. And when you think about how much he makes versus how much he pays for healthcare and how much he pays for rent or whatever, it's just unaffordable for so many people. So healthcare costs, you know, really affects so much in our life. It empties our bank account, and it brings us anxiety because whether or not we have health care. Yeah.
Well, that's true. The anxiety and the stress as well. And you also mentioned PFAS as something that really got you into politics. And it sounds like this was on your radar screen long before recent events.
Yeah. You know, when we bought our house in 2007, we sailed away in 2009. I was over in Japan, and I would jump on, you know, Google Maps, and I would look to see at our house and look at the river, and couldn't wait to get back to Maine. And I started looking up the Androscoggin River, only to discover, this is after we bought it, that it was one of the top 10 most polluted rivers in the country. And it was like, oh man. and then listening to stories of in the 50s and 60s where you could smell the river before you saw it. It was covered in foam, and the foam is floating through the air, and it just stunk. And it was abused uh, by the mills, by the textile businesses, by businesses. Quite frankly, I know this is the Chamber of Commerce, but there's an issue with uh, business owners or corporations being able to use our rivers and our land as their landfill or their dumping ground.
It's an interesting balance for Maine businesses for sure. Is that yeah, they're but as much as the businesses don't want to change the way they're doing business, everyone loves what Maine is. I mean, we live in Maine partially because we love the nature and the environment here, and that is such a priority for people across the spectrum of business ownership. So it's a really interesting balance of how that goes with um, the environmental concerns, and there's I'd say wildly more businesses that are in favor of doing what's right, clean energy and clean air wise,
Yeah.
but before looking at just profits or whatnot.
Yeah, and even our government, the Navy ran the Brunswick Naval Air Station for many years, and they used what's called AFFF, aqueous forming foam, and it was used to put out fires, to smother it, and it was useful, it was effective, but it wasn't safe. When it gets into our water system, it's toxic. So the Friends of Merrymeeting Bay did some tests, and just a football field length away over here was the highest pollutant level in the bay, because it comes right from where Brunswick Naval Air Station used to be. So of course, I think about how it affect our health, our well water, and also how much it costs to test all that. Several years back, I found out that it was like $700 to $800 to test your land or your well, and it took a long time because there were only so many labs to do that. Right. And so I went to Denise Tepler at the time, and I asked her about that. Who's going to pay for these tests? And if our test comes back positive, we're essentially condemning our land. Farms were, it was a concern, back then when they were finding, PFAS in dairy farms and stuff. And so who's going to pay for that, and who's going to clean it up? So that question was already being worked on. Our government was working on that, and they have been moving forward on that. So I've been pleased with how that's going. So there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of cleanup to be done. But again, this is all concerning healthcare.
Sure. Yeah.
People are getting sick from this.
Well, and another thing that you mentioned too that I really liked was talking about anxiety, talking about stress, talking about how in your personal story, meditation and interesting story. I was with I pulled together a workforce team. So the chamber started a grassroots workforce program several years ago, and we can talk about that another time. But when I was in the meeting talking about, hey, what do we want to tackle? And one of the things we were looking at was barriers to employees. So housing, transportation, childcare, mental health, substance abuse. There was a list of 10 or 12, and we said, hey, which one or two do we want to focus on? And we had a mix of educators and businesses and municipal people, around the room. And we got about halfway around the room. And I stopped everyone for a second. I said, hey, based on the answers already, this one particular topic of mental health isn't going to be selected. But I do want to note that every person representing a school has mentioned mental health, and none of the other business people have. And isn't that interesting that they're seeing it at that level and think that of all the issues, mental health is one of our biggest issues. And it's something that I don't think we put a full focus on. We look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we say, hey, it's food and shelter and clothing and that sort of thing too. But it's also your health, and health includes mental health. And I just think that's a really important topic that I think over the next 10 years is going to become even more important as it gets recognized.
Yeah. So, with that healthcare, while I'm going to be fighting for healthcare, I'm going to, hope to make sure that dental and mental health are included in that coverage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not on the backs of employers. I want to unlink healthcare from employment. There's people who can't work. Granted, there are people who won't work, but there are people who can't work and who still should get healthcare, whether it's permanently disabled or temporarily unable to work. You should still be able to have healthcare. And again, how I lived in a socialist society since I was born. My father was in the Navy for 20 years. I did 22 years. And so I could always visit the hospital and not get these bills in the mail, so I know what it's like to have good coverage and feel that I was going to be taken care of if I got sick. I just want that for everybody else.
No, that's great. One of the things I always say about people that won't work is there hasn't been a system that's been created that someone hasn't tried to take advantage of. And that doesn't mean we should scrap the entire system because of that. So anyway, more about you, less about me. Question 4. If voters could only know 2 things about you before they fill out their ballot, what would those 2 things be? I've also phrased this to people saying, after you've done knocking on someone's door and you're walking away, what do you want them to remember about you?
Okay. I mentioned that going down by the river and I was meditating, and I came to a lot of, realizations, not necessarily conclusions, but realizations. And the fact that I was able to come down here and be comfortable and relax. Maine is the safest place I've been in. I've lived in 13 different states. And the first time we moved into Maine and watched the nightly news, we realized fairly quickly that the first 15 minutes wasn't going to be about crime. I'd lived in Texas, California, Florida, New York, Virginia, and it was crime. And so up here in Maine, we don't have any poisonous snakes, no poisonous spiders, ticks maybe, but nothing to feel afraid of. And so, being able to go down to the river and close my eyes and not be afraid of anything, that was the biggest thing. So what I intend to do is go to the Statehouse and not be afraid. I think there's a lot of politicians who go up there with these ideals of making a change for the good. They get up there and they were like, well, if I say that, I might not get elected, or I might sound dumb, or I'm going to go up there with courage to do the right thing and try to get everybody to join me. Make Maine a comfortable place to be for everybody.
I love that, man. Seriously. Anything else I haven't asked you about that you wanna get on the record about? We've covered a lot.
You know what? Yeah. I'm a photographer. So when I moved to Maine, I've been photographing Maine since 2007, but in earnest after 2013. And so I have a show that I just hung up at the Topsham Public Library. It's going to be up for the next 3 weeks. And then I've got another show coming up at the Highlands in Topsham of their veterans for the month of November. So there's going to be 26 veterans. They're going to be their portraits are hanging up on the walls at the Highlands.
That's tremendous, man. That's great. That is awesome. Rafael, the best way for people to connect with you and find out more about you as a candidate.
All right. My website is maciasforme.com. Macias, it's like Machias without the H, for me, which means Maine, not me, but
yeah.
For me, so.
I love it. Rafael, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. It's been great to get to meet you, and look forward to talking soon.
All right, cool. Thank you.